Hey, folks. I know you guys see the title here. Now, I made community post on this here recently. I done the Ford one first, and then I think the next day I done the Chevrolet one. General Motors. I ain't gonna say Chevrolet because General Motors is Chevrolet, GMC, the truck division, Pontiac, Buick, and Oldsmobile. That's General Motors. And y'all know, most of y'all that know me know I'm a Detroiter, so I'm a Motor City guy, even though I live in Texas. But the I'm the product of all United Auto Workers, and I hate unions. Parents. Oh, and let me see. The Grand Inquisitors. Shout out to Truth Teller and Super Sly 75. Oh, and shout out to all of y'all that support us, and consume and check out and comment, subscribe, comment on the content that we put out. Okay. So now with all the accolades out of the way, let's go ahead and go through this story here, and let's see see if we can do this in a reasonable amount of time. Ford and GM scrutinized for alleged Nazi collaboration. Washington Post staff writer Michael Dobbs, November 30th, 1998. 3 years after Swiss banks became the target of a worldwide furor over the business dealings with Nazi Germany, major American car companies find themselves embroiled in a similar debate. And y'all see this. That was the picture, even though I didn't get it from this source. Notice mine is a little more detailed and a little darker. So I got a better one. But this is a picture of the picture, for lack of better terms, that I posted, where Henry Ford was receiving the Grand Cross of the German Eagle in 1938. They actually came. This isn't in Germany. This is in This picture was taken in Dearborn, Michigan, which is now overran by Iraqis. The largest Iraqi population in the United States is in Dearborn, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. Go figure. Onward. 3 years after Swiss banks. Yeah. Like the Swiss banks, the American car companies have vigorously denied that they assisted the Nazi war machine or that they significantly profited from the use of forced labor at their German subsidiaries during World War II. But historians and lawyers researching class action suits on behalf of former prisoners of war are busy amassing evidence of collaboration by automakers with the Nazi regime. And I wonder who. There's a lawyer joke in there some way, but you can't ping me for it if I don't say it, right? But anybody with any brains know what I'm talking about. Going after Germans, lawyers, attorneys, got it. The issues at stake for the American automobile corporations go far beyond the relatively modest sums involved in settling any lawsuit. During the war, the car companies established a reputation for themselves as, quote, the arsenal of democracy, close quote, by transforming their production lines to make airplanes, tanks, trucks for the armies that defeated Adolf Schicklgruber. They deny that their huge business interests in Nazi Germany led them, wittingly or unwittingly, to become the arsenal of fascism. Hey, fascism, that's Benito Mussolini's thing. Y'all leave that alone. El Duce. FOMOCO has mobilized dozens of historians, lawyers, and researchers to fight a civil case brought by lawyers in D.C. and New York who specialize in extracting large cash settlements from banks and insurance companies accused of defrauding Holocaust victims. Also, a book scheduled for publication next year, which would have been 1999, right? Yes, 1999. Where we go? Hold on, y'all. Come on, did I go too far? Wait a minute. Come on. During the car company, the Ford Motor Company, Mobilize. Okay, there we go. Mobilized dozens of historians, lawyers, and researchers to fight a civil case brought by lawyers in D.C. and New York. Yeah. Also, a book scheduled for publication next year will accuse General Motors of playing a key role in Hitler's invasions of Poland and the Soviet Union. General Motors was far more important to the Nazi machine than Switzerland, said Bradford Snell, who has spent 2 decades researching a history of the world's largest automaker. Switzerland was just a repository of looted funds. GM was an integral part of the German war effort. The Nazis could have invaded Poland and Russia without Switzerland. They could not have done so without GM. Both General Motors and Ford insist that they bear little or no responsibility for the operations of their German subsidiaries, which controlled 70% of the German car market at the outbreak of the war in 1939, and rapidly retooled themselves to become suppliers of war materiel to the German army. But documents discovered in German and American archives show a much more complicated picture. In certain instances, American managers of both GM and Ford went along with the conversion of their German plants to military production at the time when U.S. government documents show they were still resisting calls by the Roosevelt administration to step up military production in their plants at home. So I guess you get paid whichever side wins, loses, you win, and whichever side wins, you win. It don't say that. That's just me talking. After 3 years of national soul searching, Switzerland's largest bank agreed last August, which would have been 1997, to make a $1.25 billion settlement to Holocaust survivors as a step they had initially resisted. Far from dying down, however, the controversy over business dealings with the Nazis have given new impetus to long-standing investigations into issues such as looted art, unpaid insurance benefits, and the use of forced labor at German factories. Although some of the allegations against GM and Ford surfaced during the 1974 congressional hearings into monopolistic practices in the automobile industry, American corporations, same thing that government does, has largely succeeded in playing down their connections to Nazi Germany, same thing the government has done. And with Switzerland, however, their very success in projecting a wholesome patriotic image of themselves is now being turned against them by their critics. Same thing that the government is doing. And you think of Ford. When you think of Ford, you think of baseball, apple pie. No, Miriam Kleinman, that Chevrolet is baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. I'm old enough to remember the commercial. I'm in my 50s. That Ford is an apple pie. You know, that's built Ford tough. Come on, Miriam, who spent weeks examining records at the National Archives in an attempt to build a slave labor case against a Dearborn-based company. You don't think of Schicklgruber having a portrait of Henry Ford on his office wall in München. Americans, we say Munich, but it's München. Both Ford and General Motors declined requests for access to their wartime archives. Ford spokesman John Spellich defended the company's decision to maintain business ties with Nazi Germany on the grounds that the U.S. government continued to have diplomatic relations with Berlin up until the Japanese attack of Pearl Harbor in December 1941, which is a true statement. That's 100% true. They may not like it, but it's true and historical fact. GM spokesman John F. Mueller, which is German, said that General Motors lost day-to-day control over its German plants in September 1939 and did not assist the Nazis in any way during World War II. Yeah, I can imagine after the war kicked off, you General Motors, and you going to go over there and say, hey, give us control of our plant. You want control of plant? Yeah. You have control. Anyone else want control? Why did that sound Slavic? And I know how to sprechen Sie Deutsch. I know better than that. Cut it out. For GIs, an unpleasant surprise. When American GIs invaded Europe in June 1944, Black 44, as it was called, mainly the Brits said that, but the ground troops also called 1944 Black 44. They did so in Jeeps, trucks, tanks manufactured by the big three motor companies, and one of the largest crash militarization programs ever taken. And Chrysler and Dodge turned out a bunch of equipment too, plane engines. The engines in the Sherman tanks were Chrysler products. Everybody got in on it. AM General, to make the Jeep. Anyway, it came as an unpleasant surprise to discover that the enemy was also driving trucks manufactured by Ford and Opel, 100% GM-owned subsidiary, and flying Opel-built warplanes. Chrysler's role in the German rearmament effort was much less significant. When the U.S. Army liberated the Ford plants in Cologne and Berlin, I've been to both of them, they found destitute foreign workers confined behind barbed wire and company documents extolling the genius of the Führer, according to reports filed by soldiers at the scene. A U.S. Army report by investigator Henry Schneider, dated September 5th, 1945, accused the German branch of Ford of serving as, quote, an arsenal of Nazism, at least for military vehicles, close quote, with the consent of the parent company in Dearborn. Ford spokesman Spellich described Schneider's report as mischaracterization of the activities of the American parent company and noted that Dearborn managers had frequently been kept in the dark by their German subordinates over events in Cologne. Yeah, and they didn't have fax machines and the internet to shoot emails back and forth either. So I'm just trying to be accurate. The relationship of Ford and GM to the Nazi regime goes back to the 20s and 30s, when the American car companies competed against each other for access to the lucrative German market. Hitler was an admirer of American mass production techniques and an avid reader of the anti-Semitic tracts penned by Henry Ford. I regard Henry Ford as my inspiration, Schicklgruber told a Detroit News reporter, and that's my local paper, told a Detroit News reporter 2 years before becoming the Chancellor of Deutschland in 1933, explaining why he kept a life-size portrait of the American automaker next to his desk. Although Ford later renounced his anti-Semitic writings, he remained an admirer of Nazi Germany and sought to keep America out of the coming war. In July 1938, 4 months after German annexation of Austria, which is where Hitler is, he's an Austrian, he accepted the highest medal that Nazi Germany could bestow on a foreigner, the Grand Cross of the German Eagle. Trumpets blaring and whatnot. The following month, a senior executive for General Motors, James Mooney, received a similar medal for his distinguished service to the Reich. The Reich. First, second, and third Reich. I've done the video on that with the timeline and all that other stuff. It's on my channel. The granting of such awards reflected the vital place in the U.S. that the U.S. automakers had in Germany's increasing militarized economy. Military industrial complex. We ain't the only one with it. In 1935, GM agreed to build a new plant near Berlin to produce an aptly named Blitz truck, which would later be used by the German army for its blitzkrieg attacks on Poland, France, and the Soviet Union. And they ran into the old man, General Winter, and that was the end of that. They suffered the same fate that Napoleon did. German Ford was the second largest producer of trucks for the German army after GM Opel, according to U.S. Army reports. When I was stationed in Germany in the 80s, you can buy used brand new Opel, used brand new Fords. The Ford, what we call the Ford Escort over here, I can't remember the name of it over there. And something else, that TR4i, something like that. Totally different cars. Sort of physically look the same. Totally different car. The Ford Escort, that turbocharged Escort over there in Germany would catch your ass sleeping, will dust you off. I enjoyed my time in Germany. The importance of American automakers. I bought a Quattro, though, a brand new one. Hey, I'm a sergeant, I can do that. The importance of the American automakers went beyond making trucks for the German army. The Schneider report, now available to researchers at the National Archives, state that American Ford agreed to a complicated barter deal that gave the Reich increased access to large quantities of strategic raw materials, notably rubber. Rubber was a big deal during war, big deal. Arthur Schnell says the Nazi armaments chief Albert Speer, I know that name, told him in 1977 that Hitler would never, quote, would never have considered invading Poland, close quote, without synthetic fuel technology provided by General Motors. As war approached, it became increasingly, and FY, my grandfather was in World War II. He was in Belgium, the Bastogne and Bastogne, the Battle of the Bulge, all that other stuff. And when you look at the movies that they made of it, they kind of took out the double nickel 55th Artillery, which was an all black regiment. But when you look at the movie on TV, ain't a black person in sight. Just figure I'd throw that out there. And yeah, I'm gonna say it because that's my grandpappy. He gone, but I love him to death. I can only imagine what he went through. What he's told me, but listening to it and actually experiencing it, it's two totally different things. So onward. As war approached, it became increasingly difficult for the U.S. corporations like GM and Ford to operate in Germany without cooperating closely with the Nazi rearmament effort. Under intense pressure from Berlin, both companies took pains to make their subsidiaries appear as German as possible. In April 1939, for example, German Ford made a personal present to Hitler of 35,000 Reichsmarks in honor, then it went to Deutschmarks, and I think it's euros now. I think Germany is under the euro system. Dumb. Reichsmarks in honor of his 50th birthday, according to a captured Nazi document. Documents show that the parent companies followed a conscious strategy of continuing to do business with the regime rather than divest themselves of their German assets. Less than 3 weeks after a Nazi occupation of Czechoslovakia in March 1939, GM chairman Alfred P. Sloan defended this strategy as sound business practice, given the fact that the company's German operations were highly profitable. That's why I said, I win. We win, we win. They win, we win. They lose, we win. We lose, we win. It sucks, but let's go. The internal politics of Nazi Germany, I said, dang it, of Germany, should not be considered the business of the management of General Motors, Sloan explained in a letter to a concerned shareholder dated April 6, 1939. We must conduct ourselves in Deutschland as a Deutsch organization. We have no right to shut down the plant. U.S. firms became crucial. After the outbreak of war in September 1939, General Motors and Ford became crucial to the German military, according to contemporaneous German documents and post-war investigations by the U.S. Army. James Mooney, the GM director in charge of overseas operations, had discussions with Hitler in Berlin 2 weeks after the German invasion of Poland. Typewritten notes by Mooney show that he was involved in the partial conversation of the principal GM automobile plant at Rüsselsheim to production of engines and other parts for the Junker. It's not Junker, it's Junker. It's an airplane. The JU something, JU-80 is JU something, the Junkers. Wunderbomber, a key weapon in the German Air Force under government broker contract between Opel and the Junker airplane company, which is different than the Stuka, because Junkers and Stuka, two totally different companies. Mooney notes that he returned to Germany the following February for further discussions with Luftwaffe Commander Hermann Göring, the big man, and a personal inspection of the Rüsselsheim plant. So he went there personally. I done video on Hermann Göring, the commander of the Luftwaffe, where I went on the guns before butter thing. Guns will make us powerful. Butter only makes us fat. I know about his car and his personal plane, World War I, Ace, fighter Ace, his custom-made Mercedes. I know all that stuff. I know practically anything you want to know about Hermann Göring. Mooney's, and I learned it from Germans when I lived in Germany, the majority of it. Mooney's involvement in the conversion of the Rüsselsheim plant undermines claims by GM that the American branch of the company had nothing to do with Nazi rearmament effort. In congressional testimony in 1974, GM maintained that American personnel resigned from all management positions in Opel following the outbreak of the war in 1939, quote, rather than participate in the production of war materials, close quote. However, according to documents of the Reich Commissar for the Treaty of Enemy Property, the American parent company continued to have some say in the operations of Opel after September 1939. The documents show that the company issued a general power of attorney to an American manager, Pete Haugland, in March 1940. Haugland did not leave Germany until a year later. At that time, the power of attorney was transferred to a prominent Berlin lawyer named Heinrich Richter. It's actually supposed to sound Richter, but I can't do it anymore. Richter. GM spokesman Mueller declined to answer questions from the Washington Post on the power of attorney granted to Haugland and Richter on or to provide access to the personnel files of Haugland and other wartime managers. He also declined to comment on the assertion by Schnell that Opel used French and Belgian prisoners at its Rüsselsheim plant in the summer of 1940, at the time when the American Haugland was still looking after GM interests in Germany. The Nazis had a clear interest in keeping Opel and German Ford under American ownership, despite growing hostility between Washington and Berlin. By the time of Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the American stake in German Ford had declined to 52%. But Nazi officials argued against the complete takeover. A memorandum to plant managers dated November 25th, 1941, acknowledged that such a step would deprive German Ford of, quote, the excellent sales organization, close quote, of the parent company and make it more difficult to bring, quote, the remaining European Ford companies under German influence, close quote. Documents suggest that the principal motivation of both companies during this period was to protect their investments, pad the pocket. An FBI report dated July 23rd, 1941, quoted Mooney as saying that he would refuse to take any action that might make Hitler mad. Don't want to piss off Schicklgruber. In fall 1940, Mooney told the journalist Henry Paintner that he would not return his Nazi medal because such an action might jeopardize GM's $100 million investment in Germany. Hitler has all the cards, Paintner quoted Mooney as saying. Mooney probably thought that the war would be over quickly, so why should we give our wonderful company away, said German researcher Anita Kugler, who used Nazi archives to trace the company's dealing with Nazi Germany. Even though GM officials were aware of the conversion of its Rüsselsheim plant to aircraft engine production, they resisted such conversion efforts in the United States, telling shareholders that their automobile assembly lines in Detroit were not adaptable to the manufacture of other products, such as planes, according to a company document discovered by Snell. Almost says Schnell. Schnell means, Schnell. Snell and Schnell is two different things. In June 1940, after the fall of France, Henry Ford personally vetoed a U.S. government-approved plan to produce under license Rolls-Royce engines for British fighter planes, according to published accounts by his associates. I'm going to say it again. Henry Ford personally vetoed a U.S. government-approved plan to produce under license Rolls-Royce engines for British fighter planes, according to published documents by his associates. Declaration of war alters ties. American declaration of war on Germany in December 1941 made it illegal for U.S. motor companies to have any contact with their subsidiaries on German-controlled territory. At GM and Ford plants in Germany, reliance on Ford labor increased. The story of Elsa Iwanawa, who brought a class action suit against Ford last March, is typical. At the age of 16, she was abducted from her home in the southern Russian city of Rostov by German soldiers in October 1942, with hundreds of other young women to work at the Ford plant in Cologne. The conditions were terrible. They put us in barracks on 3-tier bunks, she recalled in a telephone interview from Belgium, where she now lives. I lived there for a short amount of time. They almost had me. I was debating. I don't want to leave here. Where she now lives, it was very cold. They did not pay us at all and scarcely fed us. The only reason that we survived was that we were young and fit. That helps a lot. That helps a lot, because a 16-year-old can endure some stuff that a 46, 56-year-old, you can't hack it. Not that you can't hack it here. You can't hack it here. You don't have that youth that's left you. In court submission, American Ford acknowledges that Iwanawa and others were forced to endure a sad and terrible experience at its Cologne plant, but maintains that redressing such tragedies should be a government-to-government concern. Spellish, a Ford spokesman, insists the company did not have management control over its German subsidiary during the period in question. And now that war was already, the bullets were already going back and forth, I don't see the Gewehr saying, you know what, Ford, we gonna stop using y'all plant that we was using before we got in the war with y'all. Yeah, no. I would. Hey, you want to hear the truth? I wouldn't either if I had control of it. Damn right, I'm gonna use it. What are you gonna do? Sue me? Ford Ford has backed away from its initial claim that it did not profit in any way from forced labor at its Cologne plant. Spelish said that company historians are still researching this issue, but has found documents showing that after the war, American Ford received dividends from its German subsidiary worth approximately $60,000 for the years 1940 to 1943. He declined the request to interview the historians, saying they were too busy. The extent of contracts between American Ford and its German-controlled subsidiary after 1941 is likely to be contested at any trial. Simon Reich, boy, he got the right name, don't he? An economic historian at the University of Pittsburgh and an expert on the German car industry, said he has yet to see convincing evidence that American Ford had any control over its Cologne plant after December 1941. And if y'all thinking about the name Cologne for the Spritz, yes, look it up. That's where it came from. He adds, however, that both Opel and Ford did absolutely everything they could to ingratiate themselves to the Nazi state. While there was no direct contact between American Ford and its German subsidiary after December 1941, there appear to have been some indirect contacts. In June 1943, the Nazi custodian of the Cologne plant, Robert Schmidt, traveled to Portugal for talks with Ford managers there. Portugal was a hot spot. People at Portugal and Spain, though we ain't had nothing. Bullshit. And Switzerland, they ain't clean. Switzerland ain't clean. Switzerland is filthy. Yeah, I said it. They just as filthy as everybody else, but they try to claim the divine. There's nothing divine about you. Get your fair share of mud right along with everybody else. In addition, the Treasury Department investigated Ford after Pearl Harbor for possible illegal contacts with a subsidiary in occupied France, which produced German army trucks. The investigation ended without charges being filed. A lot of people don't realize Germany made a damn good truck. Their half-track was just as good as the army, as our half-track. Their half-track truck was very good. And we ain't got to talk about the Tiger tanks. We know that. If they could have kept enough mechanics on them in the field, we might be singing a different tune. Even though American Ford now condemns what happens at its Cologne plant during the war, it continued to employ the managers in charge at the time. After the war, Schmidt was briefly arrested by Allied military authorities and barred from working for Ford. But he was reinstated as the company's technical director in 1950 after he wrote to Henry Ford II, claiming that he had always detested the Nazis and had never been a member of the party. A letter signed by a leading Cologne Nazi in February 1942 described Schmidt as a trusted party member. Ford maintains that Schmidt's name does not show up on Nazi membership lists, but Schmidt is a common German name. So, I mean, come on, y'all. Mel Weiss, and it's not Weiss, it's Weiss. W is pronounced like a V. An American attorney and a V is pronounced like a W. Make it make sense. For Iwanawa, argues that American Ford received indirect profits from forced labor at its Cologne plant because of the overall increase in the value of German operations during the war. He noted that Ford was eager to demand compensation from the U.S. government after the war for losses due to bomb damage to its German plants, and therefore should also be responsible for any benefits derived from forced labor. Similar arguments apply to General Motors, which was paid $32 million by the United States government for damages sustained to its government plants. Listen to that again. Similar arguments apply to General Motors, which was paid $32 million by the United States government for damages sustained to its German plants. Washington attorney Michael Hausfeld, who is involved in the Ford lawsuit, confirms GM also is, quote, on our list as a possible target. Copyright 1998, Washington Post Company. Folks, tell me what you think. Tell me what you think. That's all I got. I am just an observer, just like my fellow here. Y'all be good and be safe. Rate, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Bye.